that it didn't matter if you were tired or in a bad mood, the cows still had to be milked. Linda knows this milking the cow mentality contributed to her success as a Mary Kay businesswoman. And let me tell you, she's achieved great success in her Mary Kay career. As a sales director, Linda earned 10 top sales director trips. She earned 7 prestige trips. She was recognized as a top 10 unit in her seminar 7 times. She led her unit to the $1 million Circle of Excellence 6 times and reached as high as the $1,150,000 circle. She's been a top 10 sales director nationwide 3 times. And Linda debuted as a national sales director out of the Mary Kay national area in 2000. And since that time, she's achieved Diamond Circle 15 times and Inner Circle twice. Linda's highest monthly check so far is over $53,000. In her Mary Kay career, Linda has earned over $8 million in commissions. In 1997, Linda received the highest honor in Mary Kay when she was named the annual Go Give winner for her seminar. Linda is often described as a master trainer, strategic, and determined. She is one powerful leader. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Independent National Sales Director, Linda Toupin.
I bought my new house, and the selling point was when we got to the basement, and in my basement there's this room that's about maybe 1,200, 1,500 square feet, and it's lined with shelves. And for a girl who's moved 6 times in the past 10 years, I felt like I'd arrived at heaven for all the storage that was in the storage area somewhere. And so I used it when I bought it as a staging area, and I brought in all this stuff that I'd been carrying around with me all these years, and I started going through it. And I don't really consider myself a collector of things. If you know me very well, I'm almost Amish. But I like to kind of think I'm a collector of people. And maybe I'm more a collector of my own life. And so in the storage room, among all of these tubs, there's 2 tubs that are vintage clothes. I mean, 60s and 70s clothes that I actually sewed myself. And they're really super cool, and they're attached to a memory, and they're a keepsake, and I can take myself back in time as soon as I pull it out of the tub. Also in my storage room are some tubs of diaries from grade school and high school, and calendars, and even all my Mary Kay date books and my financial journals. But you know, when I die, my kids are going to just take this stuff and put it in the dumpster because it really has no meaning to anyone other than me. Well, maybe that's not true. Those vintage clothes are really cool. Can you just kind of imagine maybe in 2050, some girl goes in a vintage store and out of a tub or a shelf somewhere she pulls my blue jeans from 1968. And I've sewn that little triangle thing in the seam on the side and put flower hippie things. And she'll think, who was that woman that wore this? Oh, that's my fantasy. Anyway, that's not a legacy. My legacy is not in that box. That's keepsakes. Those are just memories. Next year, at this time, I'll be standing on stage in Orlando, Florida with my grandchildren and my son and my daughter and my family, and I'll get to debut as an emeriti. Don't you just guys love the fact that debuts never stop? We debut as a new consultant, and then a red jacket, and then a sales director, and then as a national sales director, and then we debut as a NSD emeriti, and I'm looking forward to that. And one of the strategies that you really want to keep in mind as you're building your legacy, so to speak, in this company is the fact that your base unit gets to be passed on to one of your first line directors or to now one of your first line national sales directors. And so it's kind of like a farm or a business. It gets passed on to someone else. And usually by the time you're a national sales director, you've got a pretty wealthy unit of consultants who have very large customer bases. And so it becomes an inheritance. So my daughter will inherit my unit. But that's not a legacy. That's an inheritance. Legacy, you guys, is something very different. Your legacy is actually left in the evidence of other people's lives, oftentimes without them knowing from whence it came. I've always wanted to use the word whence in a sentence. I'm going to repeat this. You're only allowed one original thought, Mary Kay, and this is Twitter-worthy. Your legacy is actually left in the evidence of others' lives, oftentimes without them knowing whence it came. They say, this is kind of depressing, they say that after you're dead and gone, after 3 generations, no one knows you. They don't know your name. Now, you can get depressed about that, but when you look at this, the fact that your legacy is left in the evidence of others' lives, then does it really matter? So let me give you an example. My children are currently 32 and 29, and by the time they were old enough to really know anything, all of their great-grandparents had passed except one. And if you asked them today what her name was, they would say Mama Granny. I don't know that my children would know her name was Jean Hacker, other than the fact of the stories that I tell, and before she died, I gave her a cassette player and asked her to record her life. And 22 tapes later, she told me her life. It would make an amazing movie. But you see, all of my children's great-grandparents were born before the Great Depression, and they raised their children in the Great Depression. And they are known in our history books as the Great Generation. And we would be so lucky if this was the adjectives that we could use for our generations. Deeply religious, God-fearing, wise, brave, respectful, selfless, thrifty, respect for authority. If I use words like Billy Graham, John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, and Mary Kay Ash, that would be the great generation. And there was another thread that actually connected those people together in that generation, and that was an amazing work ethic, you guys. An industriousness. They didn't even know there was such a thing as a vacation. And it was this generation that built our great country in so many ways. Well, that is when we start talking about legacy, because that work ethic is a legacy. It is left in the evidence of others' lives, oftentimes without them knowing from whence it came. So fast forward to sometime in the 70s, and it was my first marriage, and I was getting ready to leave my parents' home. You know, some people collect figurines, but anyway, that's another story. Okay, so we're getting ready to get in the car, and my parents pull me to the side, and they say, Linda, go show them how hard you can work. That's a legacy that was born 2 generations before. If you met my son, who's a pediatric neurologist, who can work a 31-hour shift, or my daughter, who is a singer and songwriter and can live in a tour bus 300 days a year and go without sleep, that's their great-grandparents living today. That is a legacy. So my challenge with all of you today, and my assignment, is to ask you, what is your legacy? Not the legacy of the person sitting beside you, not the legacy of the person behind you, not the legacy of the people at home, but the legacy of you. What is your legacy? There's an icon in Mary Kay that had a great influence on my life, Rena Tarbett. She went out into the mission fields of the Go Give area, now the Mary Kay Ash area, and she taught all week, every weekend. And I was one of the benefactors of her training. And she was an incredible mentor for me and left her legacy inside me. And there was a time where someone questioned her and said, Rena, you're so inspirational, you're so motivational, you should go into social work. And I'm sure behind the scenes she rolled her eyes and scoffed and thought, what in the heck do you think I'm doing? But she answered it with a simple question. She said, not a simple question, but a simple wisdom, because, you know, wisdom is wisdom. And she said, you know, honey, I could give a man a fish and I could feed him for a day, but I could teach a man to fish and I could feed him for the rest of his life. That's what you and I do. See, our words carry so much power. Our teachings carry so much power. Our affirmations of others carry so much power that it creates a ripple effect that's almost breathtaking, a domino effect, if you will. I'm one of those weirdo people that actually can't wait to die. So hopefully I've got another 20 or 30 years here, but if you're part of the process when it's all over, I don't want you to be sad. I want you to say, she finally got to see how it works. Because I'm convinced that there's more than 3 levels. I'm convinced that everything that we do begins to accumulate in other people's soul. You know, sales director Mary Lou Cassida in the Toupin National Area oftentimes reminds us that God will not judge us at the end of our life. Instead, God will judge us at the end of time. Because only at the end of time will we know the effect that we had on generations not yet born.
Pretty awesome, Linda Toupin.
You, the words you spoke today, the words, the teachings, the affirmations, the love you pour into other people's souls is having a cumulative effect, and it is literally shape-shifting generations that have not been born yet. You are powerful. We know that we have documented proof, you guys, that it only takes one strong man or one strong woman to literally break a cycle of ignorance or poverty or abuse. So imagine at the end of our lives when we're actually shown at the end of our life the domino effect of every word we ever spoke and every kindness we ever offered and every teaching that we ever did. It is accumulating constantly in other people's souls. And it's changing who they are, and it changes their destiny. Hence, the destiny of generations that's not been born. You know, I've lived long enough in this business to see the passing of many consultants and many directors. And there's a common thread that happens at those services when I attend. It sounds something like this. Her best years was when she was in Mary Kay. Her happiest years was when she was in Mary Kay. The lessons she taught us when she would come home from her appointments and her sales meetings, the things that she was learning, she poured into us. Or those long car rides where she forced us to listen to cassettes and CDs. They changed us as well. I would challenge you, how many of you are insisting that your children listen to the downloads that you are listening to? You see, people's lives are changed and destinies are shifted by your words, by you, by how you make other people feel. If you want a stronger legacy, build a bigger platform. The bigger the platform, the more influence you have. The more influence you have, the deeper your legacy. If my 4 great-grandparents can be affecting the lives of Neil and Katie Toupin today, and they had no platform other than their family, imagine the power that you have in the world that we live today and in this platform of Mary Kay. Who could have imagined a little girl from southeastern Kentucky who was baptized in her family's pond would one day stand on stage in China in front of thousands of women in a country where God is not acknowledged to be allowed to talk about this entity that guides my life? That is legacy. That is influence. When I left teaching, I took a little bit of flack from some of the teachers and from some of the parents, and they said, Linda, don't leave, you're making a difference. And I said, you just wait to see what happens when I get a hold of the mama. You can change a child's life, but when you change mama's life, I would have to say that part of my legacy will be a word that I am known for. It is called choices. I have a 7-foot piece of art in my house that says the words. Repeat after me. I am where I am.
I am where I am.
By the choices I have made.
By the choices I have made.
Or I have allowed others.
Or I have allowed others.
To make for me.
To make for me.
I'm sure on my gravestone there will be the words personal responsibility. You see, God
doesn't use the word choice. He uses the word free will. We have the free will to decide how we will feel. Yes, we can decide how to feel. We can decide what thoughts to think. We can decide how to react. Oftentimes, I end a guest event by talking about the puzzle box of life. I happen to believe personally that when we were born, God just took this big old box of puzzle pieces and He dumped it out on our coffee table called life. And He said, put it together. But He didn't give us the box top. And so every day we turn over pieces, and after a while we begin to develop a pattern, and we start to think, wow, okay, this is what I'm putting together. This is what it's going to look like. This is what my life is going to look like. And at some point, whether we're young or old or in between, it doesn't matter, we turn over pieces that are not supposed to be in our box in our mind. Sometimes they're evil, and sometimes they're dark, and sometimes they're so tragic they rip our soul out. And we say to God, no, that is not supposed to be in my box. No, that is not how it's supposed to end. No, that is not for me. But here's what I know about every single puzzle I have ever put together. At the end of the puzzle, every piece fit perfect. And when we turn over those tragic pieces and those dark pieces, sometimes we turn our face away from God. And sometimes it rips our soul apart, and sometimes we lose our soul, and sometimes we lose ourselves. But if you can hold on to the fact that everything, if you believe it with all of your heart, and if you have faith, it will fit perfect in a big plan that we can't begin to see. You guys, you have a choice every day, and those choices accumulate into decisions, into actions, and they ultimately accumulate out here in the world, in the universe. Everything that's coming from you is going somewhere, and I believe it goes into other people's souls. And those souls have destinies. And you have so much power. Don't you ever believe for 1 second that you are insignificant. I don't care what someone mistakenly told you once upon a time. They are not God. They are human, and they make mistakes, and sometimes they're ignorant. You are powerful. God made you in His image, and He has a great plan for you. And you need to step into that greatness and believe with all of your heart that you and what you do matters and accumulates in other souls. Because you see, a legacy is not a keepsake in a tub. A legacy is not an inheritance. Instead, it is something so rich and so powerful. It is literally changing generations not yet born, because your legacy is left in the evidence of lives, oftentimes without them knowing whence it came.